Well, my name is Jesse Butterworth. We just started a church, like literally just started a church just a couple months ago called Rain City Church, which meets right at Lincoln Square Cinema, right down the road here on Sunday mornings. And so before that, I was music pastor at a church called Bellevue Christian Church over in Redmond. And then before that, I was an exotic dancer. And before that, so when I just got out of college, you think I'm kidding? I just got out of college. I went to college at Azusa Pacific University in Southern California. And yeah, anybody going to APU next year? Yeah, one person. Awesome. All right. I just got out of college. I proposed to my girlfriend, who later would become my wife, and she lives, she is from Oregon. We went to school together, and her dad is a logger. Okay, and so I spent my whole life as a musician, as like somebody that doesn't do like a lot of hard work, Like, I sit there with a guitar or whatever, and if I start to sweat, I'm like, where's my towel? So before we got married, though, I needed to make some money. And so I decided I would move up to live with her parents before the wedding. And I would go to work for her dad as a logger, okay? Bad idea. So logging, have you guys seen any of the logging shows on TV now? I mean, it's a little more like popular now. But it's some hard work. So I went to work out there. Well, these guys hated me. I mean, absolutely hated me, because not only was I the boss's future son-in-law, which means that I was just a glutton for punishment. I had a big target painted on me. But I was from California. And people, especially loggers in Oregon, hate people from California. And so they gave me the nickname. The first day I showed up was California. Okay? So they started calling me California. Well, after a few days, they realized I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about logging. And so they added a word before California. And that word is a word that I will not say here. However, I will tell you it starts with the word F. Okay? So, Effin' California was what I began to be called within the first week. Well, eventually they realized that this was too long of a nickname. Stick with me, guys, okay? Stick with me. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Effin'. So, they're like, all right, Effin' California is too long. So they just shortened it to the F word. This is a true story. For the entire summer, I was known by the F word. So, to the point where they would... Oh, I thought it was like coming up. It's like, no, sorry. Shut this down. To the point that, like, there was actually a point where they were pulling up a log. It was a big log, and the butt of the log got stuck on a stump, and it swung around. And then the guys said, they like screamed the F word. And I wasn't paying attention. And so then I looked up and I was like, what? What? I realized they weren't saying my name. They were just saying the expletive. So, anyway, needless to say, it was a rough summer. And even to this point, when I go and I see her dad and their co-workers and stuff like this, even to this day, they still call me that name. Good times, right? But it is amazing how labels have a way of sticking, right? So this Christmas, a lot of times we'll look at the Christmas story, the most popular Christmas story. There's 4 Gospels. Only 2 Gospels tell us the Christmas story. It's the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. And Luke is the one that we read. That's the one that when you watch the Charlie Brown Christmas, Linus stands up with his blanket and he does the whole thing. And but in Matthew, if you want to get to the Christmas story, you've got to skip halfway through. Because the first half of Matthew's Christmas story is he builds Jesus' family tree. And this is what we call, in Bible terms, this is what we call boring, right? This is like, and this guy begat this guy, and this guy was the father of this guy, and this guy was this guy. like super boring, right? But what's interesting is if you actually take a closer look at Jesus' family tree that Matthew puts together in the beginning of Matthew, it's actually pretty interesting. So let me give you an idea. Here is a picture of Jesus' family tree. And it's shaped like a Christmas tree. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh. Okay. But if you take a closer look, and I know it's very hard to read here, the names, because they're all the names of everyone in Jesus' lineage, all the way back to Abraham through King David. Okay? But if you look a little closer, you realize that there are some pretty embarrassing people in Jesus' family tree that Matthew seems to go out of his way to highlight. So, if you look a little closer, there's a liar. There's a guy who sold his brother into slavery. There's a gal who tricked her father-in-law into sleeping with her. There's a product of incest. There's a prostitute. There's a guy who had his friend killed so he could sleep with his best friend's wife. There's a womanizer, an idol worshiper, a king who tortured his own people until they turned on him and killed him, and finally a Justin Bieber fan. These are people we are embarrassed about. We don't talk about these people. Okay? These are folks you don't want to bring up at Christmas parties, okay? Any Justin Bieber fans in the house? Yeah! All right. We're going to pause real quick. Let's pray for these people, shall we? Jesus exorcised these demons. So why, you got to ask the question, why does Matthew go out of his way while he builds this family tree? Why does he go out of his way to include these people that would probably best be just forgotten, not talked about within there? Well, the reason is this, because Matthew knew firsthand that Jesus came for those who have wandered far from God. He knows firsthand that Jesus came for those who have labels, who have histories from the past, right? Because Matthew knows he's about to launch into the greatest story ever told, the story of Christmas. That's the light piercing the darkness. It's about life entering a world of death. It's about grace entering a world that was ruled by the law. At its very core, Christmas is a rescue mission. Christmas is God saying, you're not able to come to me because of who you are, but I will come to you because of who I am. So as Matthew puts together Jesus' family tree, he underscores the fact that all along the way, God's family is full of unworthy screw-ups with labels who have received grace and mercy even when they didn't deserve it. So let's take a look at the beginning of Matthew. If you have a Bible, you can open up there if you want. I've got it on the screen too, if you want to check it out. So Matthew 1, we're just going to skip through here. This is a record of the ancestors of Jesus the Messiah, a descendant of David and of Abraham. Now, he goes through and he starts connecting the dots through Abraham all the way through. And then just skip down to verse 5. Solomon was the father of Boaz, and then he goes out of his way to say, whose mother was Rahab. Whose mother was Rahab. Now, he could have left that part out, but he goes out of his way to include that. Well, I have two sons at home. My littlest son is Finn. He's 4 years old. And in the mornings, he has this little thing he likes to do. I take, like super piping hot showers. And I just get in there and I, just try to relax. I usually have some prayer time. And, and he sneaks in. And he takes a cup and he fills it up with cold water. And very quietly, he opens the curtain and he pours it all over me, which I shriek like a girl at that point. And then he runs away like, I did it again, And so, but if you are in the original audience that Matthew is writing to, which is the original Jewish audience, Matthew is a Jew, and he is writing to a Jewish audience, that is what this feels like. This feels like a cup of cold water in a warm shower to these people. Why in the world would you go out of your way to include Rahab? Because Rahab had a reputation. Rahab had a history. Rahab had a label. Does anybody know what Rahab's label is? She's known as Rahab the what? The prostitute. Thank you. Rahab the prostitute. Even all of these thousands of years later, she is still known as Rahab the prostitute. And it is amazing how labels have a way of sticking. Now, it's not uncommon for people throughout history and throughout pop culture and fiction and literature and even now, it's not uncommon for people to have labels associated with their names. In fact, everybody, if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, grab it right now, pull it out. We're going to do a little quiz, okay? Now, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to fill in the blanks. And you guys realize I can see you, right? And so when you're not pulling out a piece of paper and a pen, you realize I can see that, right? And I forgot to mention that I am lethal. I can kill you in ways that you don't want to know. All right, guys, here we go. 30 seconds. Fill in the blanks. Ready? Go for it. All right, how'd you guys do? Here we go. Let's figure it out. It is, shout them out if you've got it. It is Alexander the Great. That is correct. It is John the Baptist. Yes. It is Conan. Barbarian. Yes, I would have also taken the talk show host. The Barbarian is more correct. Vito. The what? Yeah, the Don or the Godfather, right? He's the Godfather. Anybody? That was made 20 years before you were born. Attila the Hun. Thank you. Buffy the yes. Jabba the yes. Billy the yep. Wilt the yeah. Good job. I didn't think anybody would get that one. That is an awesome day in basketball right there, y'all. Short shorts, baby. Let's bring them back. Wow. Mike. The Situation. I would have also taken Mike the Idiot. And Jesse. The Body. Oh, come on. Nobody WWF from the 80s? Jesse the Body. Come on. All right. How'd you guys do? Who got them all right? Anybody? Yes. I mean. Well, it's amazing how nicknames have a way of sticking with us. Labels that we can't seem to shake. And unfortunately for Rahab, Rahab is known as Rahab the. She's known as Rahab the. Thank you. All these thousands of years later, she cannot seem to shake it. And right in the center of Jesus' family tree, we have a prostitute, which causes some tension. So today I want to look at, quickly, I want to look at the story of Rahab. This is found in Joshua, if you want to follow along. Now, Israel is a brand new nation. They have just, the Hebrews have just left Egypt where they were slaves. And they've just known slavery for their whole lives. And they're finally free. They leave Egypt, and they are about to move into the promised land, into the land that God has promised them. This is the land that they used to be in, and then they became slaves, and now they've got to go back and reclaim this land. So they cross the Jordan River, and they're about to move through an area that is controlled by the city of Jericho. Okay, anybody familiar? Is this familiar to anybody? Is this ringing a bell? Okay. Thank you. You? All right. So they get there, and Joshua says, all right, we've got to figure out what's going on. So he sends 2 spies into Jericho to sneak in and figure out what they're up against. So these 2 guys go in, and they're spotted. And so the guards of Jericho go to the king, and they say, hey, we think there's some spies among us. They say, go get them and bring them to me. Well, the last these guys are seen is they're seen sneaking, the spies are seen sneaking into a house. And that house belongs to Rahab, the prostitute. So they knock on the door, and Rahab comes to the door. And the guards say, "Have you seen these two Hebrews? We heard that they were in your home." And she said, yeah. They were here, but they just left after sundown. And I'll bet you if you round up a posse and go look for them, you'll probably find them because they can't be too far away. So they leave and they go around the city looking for these two guys. And meanwhile, she goes upstairs on the roof where she's hiding these two spies, and she has a conversation with them. And she says to them that she believes that their God, the God that she knows very little if nothing about, but she says that she believes that their God really is the true God, the God that will help them and help her. So we're picking up in Joshua chapter 2, verse 12. She says, this is Rahab talking to the spies, "Now swear to me by the Lord that you will be kind to me and my family since I have helped you. Give me some guarantee that when Jericho is conquered, you will let me live, along with my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters, and all their families." And then they reply, "We offer our own lives as a guarantee for your safety." The men agreed. "If you don't betray us, we will keep our promise and be kind to you when the Lord gives us the land." Then, since Rahab's house was built into the town wall, she let them down by a rope through the window. Okay, so she lets them down through the window. She gives them instructions on how not to get caught. They eventually make their way back to the Israelites and to Joshua. And when they meet up with Joshua, they report that this city is ripe for the taking. These people are freaked out. They've heard about what their God has already done for them. And so they're about ready to go into Jericho and kick butt and take some names. Well, this is where the Battle of Jericho takes place. Is everybody familiar with the Battle of Jericho? Do you know that story? Remember where God gives them this kind of really interesting battle plan? He says, "Hey, you don't need your swords, you don't need your weapons. Just put on like some comfortable running shoes, because you're going to walk around the city of Jericho every day for 7 days. And then on the seventh day, you're going to shout." And everybody's sitting there like, "What did he just say? That's the stupidest battle plan I've ever done." Okay, so, but they do it, right? And so, and on the seventh day, they shout, the walls come a-tumbling down, right, in Jericho. And now it's interesting, when you read scholarship on this kind of thing, historians, both Christians and non-Christians, they have some very interesting theories about why this happened. One of the theories is that there were so many, there are estimates that there were 2 to 3 million Israelites at this time, that there were so many that when the force of the sound hit the walls, it actually made the walls crumble. There's also a theory that because they walked around so many times over this 7 days, that many feet and with those many people actually crumbled the foundation and made the walls crumble. And finally, some of the more interesting, I think, scholars in this area think that Chuck Norris looked at it and it fell. Look at his guns. It's amazing. Those were like cool at the time. I remember when I was a kid, I had them. No, we need the small ones. The real small ones with a little tip. Stick to the notes. Okay, at the end of the day, the wall collapses, chaos ensues, and the Israelites go in to take the city. And in the midst of chaos and terror and violence and things that our modern minds cannot even begin to comprehend, God reaches in and he spares Rahab and her family because of her faith, because of what she did. And then here's how the story ends up in chapter 6. This is after they've taken the city and everything's settled down, and Joshua fulfills his promise that his men had made to Rahab. It says, "Meanwhile, Joshua had the two spies, said to the two spies, 'Keep your promise. Go to the prostitute's house and bring her out, along with all her family.'" Skip to 25. "So Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute and her relatives who were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies Joshua sent to Jericho. And I love this last phrase because this is sort of the, and they lived happily ever after phrase here. It says, and she lives among the Israelites to this day. And she lives among the Israelites to this day as a picture of something that was still foreign to their way of thinking. That their God was a God of mercy and grace who would spare even an outsider, an enemy, as someone who by their very law should not even be allowed to be in community with them. But God spares her and brings her in to a new family. And you see, Matthew is reminding us at the very beginning of Jesus' story, when he sits down to write this, Matthew reminds us that the story of Rahab is really the story of Jesus. Here's an outsider, an enemy, a lawbreaker in a time that was ruled by the law. And Matthew is reminding us that God's grace is bigger than his law. And that God's mercy is broader than his judgment. And God's forgiveness can conquer any label. And even though Rahab had earned that label because of her lifestyle, God covered her with grace and invited her into a new family with a new start. But what's interesting is I don't think Rahab's story is that different than all of us here right now. Because I think that each and every one of us carry a label of our own. Maybe it's something you've earned because of the way that you live. Maybe it's a product of being bullied or abused. Maybe it's a label you've had for as long as you can remember. Or maybe it's something that just happened recently. Maybe it's something you've tried to distance yourself from, but from time to time you run into people that go, oh, aren't you that guy who, oh yeah, aren't you that girl who? And you're reminded that this label still lives on in people's lives. For some of you, you have, this label comes from maybe your friends or your family, or an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, something like that. And you so wish you could go back and undo what you have done in the past, but you know that you can't. Maybe it's a label that only you know because you have secrets or you have habits. When you think about being in relationship with God, that's the first thing that comes up, is you think, why would God want anything to do with me? Because I'm such a fill in the blank. What's your label? What's your label? So I want you to take a moment. I want you to answer that question. What's the label? What is the label that you hate? What is the thing that is sticking to your heart right now that you wish you never had to deal with again for the rest of your life? What is the one word that you hate that seems to stick with you? What is it? Are you a loser? Are you a disappointment? Are you a brown-noser? Are you a slut? Are you a gossip? Are you a cheater? Are you a fatty? Are you a jerk? Are you a liar? Are you a goody two-shoes? Are you a thief? Are you a mooch? Are you a snob? Are you a faker? Are you a luster? Are you an addict? Are you judgmental? Are you greedy? You can hear, even as I read those, there's uncomfortable laughter even as we do that, because this is not something that we want to deal with. It's either to just laugh, easy to just laugh it off, or just to, let's just pretend this doesn't happen. But take a moment and be mature this morning. Face it. What is your label? What's the label that you hate? Now do me a favor, on a piece of paper that you've got, grab a pen, and I want you to write that label down. Now please, respect each other's privacy. Don't be looking over anybody else's shoulders. This is a private thing. I want you to write that label down on a piece of paper. And when you're done, fold that piece of paper in half. When you're done, fold that piece of paper in half, put it on your lap, and just look back up at me quietly when I know you're done. All right, eyes up here, guys. So you have to remember that Matthew, the guy that is writing this, Matthew had a label of his own. Does anybody remember what Matthew's label was? He was Matthew the tax collector. That's correct. He was a Jewish tax collector, which was the most hated group of people at that time. And you see, when Jesus came to Matthew face to face, eyeball to eyeball for the first time, he did not say to Matthew, hey Matthew, once you get your life together, come and follow me. He did not look him in the eye and say, Matthew, you have a sin problem. You, my friend, are a tax collector. You sold out your brothers and your sisters, your very nation. You should be ashamed of yourself. Once you pay for all the crap that you've done in your life, then you can come and follow me. No, Jesus gets face to face with him, and he looks him right in the eye, and he says, Matthew, come and follow me. And he did. But the thing that we have to remember was that Matthew, when he did, he was still wearing his label. He still had a label, Matthew the tax collector. But over time, through relationship with Jesus, he was made into a new creation. And now we do not remember him as Matthew the tax collector. We remember him as Matthew, the follower of Jesus. Matthew, who brings us thousands of years later the story of Jesus. And we forget that label. Now do me a favor. Look down one more time, unfold that piece of paper, and look at that label one more time. What's written on that label, that might be the way that others see you, or that might be the way that you see you. But I want you to know that that is not the way that God sees you. So would you do me a favor right now? Would you hold that label up? And I want you to tear it to pieces. All right, eyes up here. This Christmas, I want you to do me a favor. And this is really a favor that you're doing for yourself. Every time you get a gift with a label on it, I want you to remember that Christmas is God's gift to you. It is Jesus looking you right in the eye, wherever you are, wherever you sit, whatever your history is, whatever your current circumstances, wherever your label is, Jesus comes face to face with you and says, follow me. I want to give you a fresh start. I want to give you a new label. I want to give you a new life. And this Christmas, when you receive those presents, I want you to look at that label and know that God sees you differently than you see you and others see you. God does not see you as your label. God sees you as his daughter, as his son, as his beloved. Would you pray with me? Jesus, help us to accept who you see us as, God. Help us to leave these labels behind. And God, I know even in this room that there are people that perhaps that we are the people who have given other people labels. I ask God that even today that we would go and reconcile and we make that right. That we would go and ask forgiveness and not continue to perpetuate labels. God, I ask that you this Christmas would again remind us of the incredible gift that you have given us by giving Jesus to a broken and hurting world that we could not get it together. But God, you said because of who you are, that you would send your Son into this world for us. Jesus, help us respond to that truth and live in a way that truly shows that we are your sons and daughters. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Couple questions here.
Sure.
What's been the hardest label for you personally to shed or get rid of, and how did you do that?
Probably Jesse the Sexy. Goes back to my erotic days. Yeah, that's a good one. Probably, I've always been pretty chubby growing up. And I realized when I got into junior high that chubby plus last name of Butterworth equals hell on earth. So I realized that I needed to be funny in order to get away with that. So I became the fat, funny guy, Like, hey, yeah. Yeah, Chris Farley, exactly. And then he died. That's probably been a label that I'm, I still make fun of it. I still go after it, but I think deep down in my heart, I don't love the fact that I'm chubby. Especially when we live in a world, we live in freaking Bellevue, people. This is like image America right here. Everybody's like, it's all about what you wear and how you look and all that kind of stuff. And you get reminded all the time that you don't measure up to where maybe other people think you should or that kind of thing. And but I'll tell you what, recently I've been kind of making more and more peace with that. And again, just trying to remember that, man, this is, a lot of this is genetic. And part of it might be because I eat a lot of food. But I'm going to blame most of it on genetics. And again, it's a daily battle. It's a daily reminder that, man, I got to remember that I really am God's beloved, God's son.
Single biggest piece of advice for teenagers dealing with labels. This is the big finish.
I'll tell you what. Here's my biggest advice that I would give you. Dealing with labels, whether you're labeling others or you have a label of your own. And it's this. Every day, make the decision of mirror, not the window. Let me explain what that means. Every day you have the opportunity to just look at somebody else and recognize everything that's wrong with them, or stuff that drives you nuts, or stuff that doesn't measure up, or anything like that. And you look through the window and you see what's wrong with them and how they can improve and what they could do differently. But every day I would challenge you to, instead of the window, choose the mirror. Because this is so consistent with Scripture. This is so consistent with what Jesus teaches. This is the guy with the plank in his eye who's talking about getting the speck out of his brother's eye. Choose the mirror. What is God, what is the brokenness inside you that wants to point out someone else's faults? What is the brokenness inside of you that wants to rip somebody else to shreds? Instead, look into the mirror and ask that question. God, what is wrong with me? That I find some kind of joy or pleasure, or I'm able to put the spotlight off of me for a while to talk about somebody else. So instead of doing that, instead of putting it on somebody else, ask the question about yourself. What is God trying to teach you in these moments?
Jesse, we were signing autographs on the travel, so down to the